Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Latina Leadership Series. My name is Angelica Casares, and I am your host. On today's episode, I have a fireball for you. I have Liz. Liz, usually I love to give my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves, who you are, and what do you do.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I am Liz Lara-Carreño. I'm a native Houstonian, and I am currently Director of Outreach and Marketing for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program here in the greater Houston area.
Thank you, Liz, for coming and joining me today. So, really quick, the reason that I selected, I asked you to come on, kindly to come in, you've accepted, thank you for coming, is you had a lot of intake, so I watched you do the presentation because I'm part of the Latina Entrepreneur Academy that you gave a presentation on. And you had a lot of insight. There was a lot of things that you were saying that was directly implicated towards the entrepreneurship aspect of it. And then you gave us a little bit of your backstory and the things that you've done. And we actually had a really quick conversation here about that backstory. So can you tell me what what led you to Goldman Sachs, or give us a little like history if you can.
I said I was a native Houstonian, and I actually have grown up in a number of the local neighborhoods. My mom is from the Magnolia area, and my dad is from Second Ward. I went to school at Our Lady of Guadalupe, and my grandmother's house was right there behind the church. I really started working very early in life. I'm the oldest of 8 children. There's 4 boys and 4 girls. And for us, it was a very orderly house. As soon as my mom was well enough, she was up and working. And so I took on a lot of the responsibilities for home, homework, house cleaning, cooking, things like that. And as we each grew up, we each had our own roles. We were literally almost a year apart. So growing up, I thought, well, I guess that's what mommies are supposed to do, is have babies. And for some reason or another, I thought about that, and I'm like, I don't know that I want to do that. So those thoughts really kind of came in early. But I always picked up jobs wanting to do things if I wanted any extracurricular activities. And so I really started working very early in life because, as my mom said, we couldn't afford to do a number of the things that I wanted to participate in. And so that was really one of my motivations to start. But it led me down a path of working for Sanderson & Sales, one of the oldest hardware stores in the Houston area. They're in Second Ward. I learned how to buy pipe and steel there. And that's how I got my job, working for the following 2 oil companies. And so I became a purchasing agent because I knew how to buy pipe and steel. And it just kind of led me down the path in working for 2 more international companies. And I bring up the point of being international companies because when we wound up moving from Second Ward into the north part of town and we went to public school, that's when I realized, like, we don't have to go to church anymore. I don't have to wear a veil to church and then go to class, and I don't have to be a nun. For a long time, I thought I was going to be a nun because that's what most of the young girls would become, going to school there. But the 2 books that we would get were Reader's Digest and National Geographic. So I learned how to tell jokes from Reader's Digest. And then National Geographic, I read through all of the National Geographics that we
So you had subscriptions to, and it would be sent to your house?
That came from the library.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I grew up after reading them is that I didn't want to just read about them. I wanted to go and see them. And so I knew that was one of the things that I wanted to do with my life is I want to go and see the world. I want to go and see all of these beautiful places that were being written and photographed beautifully by National Geographic. I even thought that I wanted to go and work for them. I'm like, how lucky are these people to be on a mountain,
taking pictures, taking these beautiful pictures, yeah.
And so, living in my neighborhood, that was just not something that you were exposed to.
Yeah.
But it led me down the path of business, and I wound up getting the opportunity to work for Continental Airlines, which led me to a 21-year global career. Mm-hmm. And so everything from reservations to airport services to training and development to corporate. which after 21 years I retired from there. But I learned a great deal working in different countries, appreciating and respecting the nuances that came with the product and services that we were delivering, and just being able to work with, oh my God, just the diversity of ideas and people. And I never forgot that I was a guest in their country. But it was something that allowed me to really expound on my entrepreneurship, on how to resolve issues and challenges, problem resolution, no matter where I was in the world, and just understand the impact with that.
So the reason that I wanted you to give us a small backstory of like what you did, the extensive experience that you have, is because part of the conversation that I like to have on here is the lead into, right, where kind of you're growing up and where your mind expanded to and how you got there, where you got. So my next question is, now, what you're doing now, why with the Goldman Sachs? Were you invited in, or did you see it? Because you have the experience and you could have gone anywhere. Why Goldman's?
Well, I will tell you that when I retired from Goldman Sachs, it was to become, I became a partner in my husband's public affairs firm.
Okay.
And Carreño Partners, and it was public affairs and public relations. And so I wound up going in and working on the creative side. But as clients were coming in and they would start talking about their businesses, their operations, the development, the challenges with HR, their finances, I'm like, oh, that's an easy fix. Here's how you do that. And I really kind of created a business from just the clients and listening to their challenges. And then my first client under LLC Strategies, which stands for Liz Lara-Carreño, was creating a nonprofit. And it was someone that we knew, and it came from a news story. And I knew nothing about dogs other than saving them from the SPCA, and nothing about law enforcement other than maybe getting stopped once a long, long time ago. But we created Canines for Cops, which is now the largest provider of canines for law enforcement agencies.
Out of Houston.
Yep. And did it from scratch. So I learned everything, from the top up, from the bottom up, I should say. So that was an experience, but I also had clients. And that's when Goldman Sachs came into the Houston market around 2010, and it was to launch in 2011. And the premise behind the Goldman Sachs program is that everybody has a specialty, whether they are a roofer, a baker, restaurant owner, a CPA, an attorney, even a medical doctor. They're all great at what they do, but businesses were closing between the second and the fifth year. And that's because most businesses have challenges with their finances, their operations, who their target market really is. And so Babson College, which is one of the #1 entrepreneurial schools in the nation, the Goldman Sachs Foundation, and an organization called ICIC.org, which stands for Initiative for Competitiveness in Inner City. And they look at businesses in inner cities. This is a perfect example. How do we create more revenues in this area now that the ION is here?
Correct.
How do we do that? And so now everybody visits more of the businesses in this community, therefore this community will grow. And that's really the long-term premise behind it. So I came in and I started as mod faculty teaching the leadership, the team development, operations. I teach negotiations. And so it's a little bit of everything. And then in 2014, I came on as their official outreach director.
Okay.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
And it's a pattern. So I share that because not everything happens overnight.
No.
There's a lot of people that, God, I'd love to have your job. And I said, does it look that easy? I said, because I work really hard to make it look that easy.
Yeah.
And I think when you look behind the scenes, it's kind of like events.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a beautiful event. I want to do that. And I'm like, you have no idea what it takes to put something like that on. So it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing leadway into one of the questions that I ask usually is all this experience that you've had to come up with, there have been challenges that have been put in your their way, or they were like not foreseen, right? They weren't in the forecast. So is there and has there been a challenge that has either been brought on by, sometimes it's just society and sometimes it's just being a woman, and sometimes they see you as a woman of color, and like you said earlier, you don't like to become the victim. You don't like to be seen as a victim. You want to see their solutions to everything, correct? Mm-hmm. Has there ever been one, and is there one that stands out for you?
I always tell my business owners when something has happened, I said, don't be a victim, be a good student. What have you learned from this so that you don't find yourself in that same situation again, or you're able to identify resources that can help come up with a solution and get you out of it. I think, for me, I've been very lucky in just being able to do that. I think I shared with you that I was never that person that said, I want to be her. I've always been that person that says, I want to do that, or I want to try that. So at least to say, oh my God, that was really a great experience. Like, okay, check that, won't do that again. And I think that when life happens, and I used to have this on my social media probably for about 5 years, that man makes plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
And so with that, my mom became very ill. My mom used to work for the EEOC and became very ill, paralyzed her on one side. So I really had to change. My whole family also had to change how to, care for a loved one and be there for whatever it is they need. And then after she passed away, my husband became very ill. And my husband was a go-getter, just like my mom. They both did not want to die, but their bodies had come to a point where they gave up. But their minds were so strong and just wanted to persevere and continue. And so after really being a caretaker for both my mom and for my husband, the trajectory of what I thought I was going to be able to do by a certain age had changed. Okay. And so I really became that caretaker, and I began to do more research on nursing homes and rehabs and medications and Medicare, what needs to be done, how you begin to take care of yourself. And really, as a business owner, when a business owner has to close their business, it's not just you. You now have to look at all the employees that worked for you. You now have to look at the community that you were serving, and what's going to happen to them. So it's very much a snowball effect, and just understanding that. And, I say that because I think that we think we're invincible, and we need to stop and take a look at ourselves and say, I need to take care of myself physically and mentally and emotionally so that I can take care of everyone else that's in this business. Yeah. And so I did make some changes, and I have no regrets. I think, if anything, what I learned then, you always learn something. And I think the biggest positive is, how do I now use that for something else and continue that process? So that's the part of me that says, I'm a good student. What do I use this for now?
So in corporate America, listen, you've been there, obviously. There's a lot of politics that takes place within corporate America. You play a lot of politics, and you've never been shy. Because it dawned on me. I was like, no wonder she was well invested in politics outside of politics within the workspace. You've never shied away from those kind of conversations. What is your extent in politics itself? You've been in that space. You talk about the Democratic caucus. You talk about these items. How did it lead you into there? Because you obviously and I mentioned this as a leadership, because this is such a leader. This is such a leader thing to do, is to not shy away from things in work, and you look at it and you're like, where else can I make a difference? Where else can I go? What else can I do?
I think we get shaped by the things that are around us, and unless we wind up getting exposed to things that are further out, we sometimes believe that that's our path. And I told you that growing up at Our Lady of Guadalupe, for many years in my 20s, I thought I was going to be a nun, because most of the girls went on to be novices. Even though I went on to public school, it was still in my head. I think that working in education and sustaining the family, because we were a big family, I will tell you there were times that we had powdered milk. We used to have the milkman deliver, and then sometimes there was powdered milk. And we're like, my mom must be trying something new on us. We never knew that there were difficult times because they never let us know that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that in the politics, it was just one of those things where I had a roommate who was involved in politics who worked for an elected official. And she said, I really need you to help me, you know, I need you to volunteer. So it started out as being a volunteer. And then when I saw some of the things that were happening and really educating myself on, okay, we really need to do this, I said, I just want you to know I'm going to get involved in the politics because I believe that I can do something. And so I love the party politics. Understanding the platforms, understanding that we are electing people that are making decisions for how we live.
Yeah.
And as I get older, it has been people are making decisions for how I'm going to live out the rest of my life, the impact on my business.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people always, you know, understand and make that connection until something bad happens. And so becoming involved in party politics, I also moved forward in the position of running for office. You know, it's a position well. I worked in the community. I worked in the with many of the political organizations, precinct judges, the party. And for a very long time, it was in my head that the only way that I could make change was if I was an elected official. And I ran against Felix Fraga. I lost by less than 100 votes.
Really?
And there's even a backstory to that, so I'm not even, but I'm like, that's at another time.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, after that, there's that group that says, you know, we want you to run again and so forth. And I really needed to think about that because, you know, here was one part of politics and making change, and in your mindset, this is the only way to do it. But it isn't. You know, I now look back. It took me a couple of years, and as I looked back, that's not the only way that you make change. You don't have to be an elected official. But if you were part of the group that elected that candidate, then you need to support them to get the job done. Whether it's writing the checks, whether it's, you know, writing the letters. But you can make change in any aspect. And for me, I chose to do it from a business perspective, more from a public affairs standpoint. You know, how do I help my community thrive? How do I ensure that these businesses continue to grow and serve in our community, whether they be men or women? And, you know, so that's really how I wound up, you know, stepping into that arena. Now, at that time, I wound up taking a position. We were just about to open up stations in Latin America, Europe, and Asia, and I'm like, that excited me more than anything. But it allowed me to make the money to come back and work the campaigns, make my contributions, you know, and then support the organizations that were making changes in our community.
Such as financially and we're, getting the jobs done.
That's it.
That were promised. Yeah. Okay. So here we are, right? You're doing. What are you doing now outside of Goldman Sachs? Because I know you have to be doing more. That you just seem, and you come off as the person who she's on it. So,
well, I'm glad that I look that lively. You know, I think for me, I'm really in a transitional place there. You know, I lost my husband in 2017. A lot of people didn't realize how sick he was. And so when he passed away at the end of 2017, in 2018, I came down with thyroid cancer. And so by the time I'd gotten in it had already spread. So that's why I always, you know, when I have conversations with women, I always say, you know, check yourself. You get your hormones from your ovaries and your thyroid. Make sure that you're healthy. Make sure that you're good. It's very much like when you get on board a plane and something happens, you put the mask on yourself before you put the mask on somebody else, because you need to be doing well and alive. And so it took me just a couple of years to get back, but it also was during the time of COVID. We just got out of COVID, and really my period of mourning. I always tell someone that if you cry and it's painful, then you know that it was love. And so I did lose a great love of my life. And I'd have to say that really in the last 6 months, I've just kind of come out and started being social again.
Okay.
I work a lot, so I do a lot of events and I meet a lot of people. But getting back into the political game, that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
And just looking at who's making decisions, why are these decisions being made, why are we not speaking up? Even in business, we were talking about panels.
Yeah.
I want to know, when we talk about diversity, if we are in the year of diversity, then I want to see Latinos and Asians, Middle Eastern, Indo-Americans, Black and white. I want to see that diversity on all of our panels and in all of our businesses.
Yeah.
So
Rightfully so.
So for me, I just continue to, to work with organizations that continue to support those efforts for their growth.
Okay. So I've heard part of it, and I'm trying to see if I can fit like most of it in here. But you know what, Liz, I'll lay off of it, but I will get a little bit personal. So I'm going to get a few personal, if you don't mind. So I ask a few questions. This is a question I like to ask some of my guests. So, have you ever been wrong? Now, you don't have to go into details. You don't have to mention what it was. But was there a lesson learned, and what was it?
Oh, I've been wrong. I've been wrong a lot of times, and my husband would love to, to hear that. And one of the lessons that when I've been wrong is just to say I'm wrong. And the same thing when I've hurt somebody's feelings, you just say I'm sorry. There's no buts. There's no ands. There's no hey, it's just I was wrong. I'm sorry. Or just I'm sorry. So I think the biggest lessons is just understanding what I did and then apologizing,
responsibility,
taking responsibility, and understanding the impact on the other person.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Sometimes we tend to forget that we're all human, even though sometimes we tend to think we're like bionic and it's whatever. Another person, if they were hurt, they can like move on and whatever. Sometimes we remember, and I'm very much like that too, where I'm okay hurting feelings, and I have to stop. Myself because when my feelings get hurt, I prefer somebody to approach me also and be like, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. That was unnecessary.
And it's probably not being robotic or that you were intentional. It's that sometimes, and I'm very guilty of this, which is why I said I know that I've been wrong, is that I'm very task-oriented. I am very results-oriented. And so I'm moving forward not knowing that I just walked over somebody or that the tone of my voice may have been curt. And someone says, are you upset with me? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? Not realizing that I have hurt someone or I said something or I did something. And so when that is brought to my attention or if I realize it, then I'm sorry. That was not,
Yeah.
It's like I even stop myself right now. That's not my intention, is that I am sorry and accept that responsibility so that we can move forward.
Is that something you learned recently, or have you always known that, to accept responsibility?
No,
I'm going to be more like, okay.
I think when I was younger, it had to be brought to my attention because I didn't know that it was happening. I didn't know that I was doing it. And again, it's not so much being that robotic, but as I've gotten older and you go through all these personality tests, is that I know I'm very task-oriented. And so you don't look at the collateral damage when you're on a project. And so.
Thank you for telling me that, because I'm still I'm a work in progress. I'm and I try not to be like that. Okay. So another one of my questions is, you've done an extent of a lot of things. Now, how do you define success? Do you believe you've been successful? How do you define success?
I think success comes in different ways. And, for me, it's that did we accomplish, when it comes to business, is the client happy? Did we meet our numbers? If they're happy, then I've accomplished what they're looking for. If I see that I've worked on a campaign, or I just finished planting a flower bed, or I just redid my whole closet, it's like, okay, I'm happy. It was a success because it's completed.
Okay.
It's completed.
Yes.
So it's like, check that box there. I think that accountability also is, as I've gotten older, is success is really more with, myself. Mm-hmm. Am I happy with what I did? Because if I am, then that means that I gave it everything I had.
Yeah.
And if I've done that and I've done my best, then that's all I can do at this point. So I consider this to be
a success. Yeah. I have this story that I tell people that my husband, even though we're like on a trajectory of like a project or something, sometimes he will see the writing on the wall, but he's like, Angelica, it has to be done. It has to get done. And that's how I know he's defined his success. When the project is done, you go back and you look at the little marks, the tedious things that, where did we mess up? Where could we have done better? But the project is done, which means it's a success. And I've had to accept his success. My success looks a little differently. A lot of the times my success looks a little bit more like confetti. It looks a little bit more like balloons at the end of the road, right? There was a ribbon that there was people at the end and who like you marched through, and sometimes it's not like that. It's so completely in silence for him. It's like, I got it done. I don't know if the client was happy. There was a learning process that I took from it, and that was a success. You seem to be very on point with my husband, who was like, it got done. Yeah. It got done.
And I think for the client, when I said when they get their bottom results and so forth, for business, if it's successful, if the client is happy and, or your boss is happy and you've been able to accomplish this. But I think the balloons and the confetti are in my head where, that's when I said, it's like, I'm happy if I know I gave it my best, and it's like, this is good. God, you're good.
That is hard to accept. That is so hard to accept that it's me. It's me who has to accept that success. It's difficult. And sometimes as a younger woman, as a woman who's coming to age of like more maturity than I feel like I am, because I don't even think I stepped into maturity. I still feel like I'm stepping into maturity. I don't know if that's comes with age or comes with like life experience.
I believe it comes with life experiences, because I think that what success looks like for you at 25 is going to look very different than what it looks like at 55. And to me, life changes. A quick example is, when my husband passed away, I want to say that I probably took out about 60 awards. Wood, glass, metal, ribbons, papers, pictures, and I'm thinking, what do you do with all of this here? To show, was this all on the wall to show how successful you are? Yeah. Because, and for me, if you looked into, I don't want any of that. I always tell folks, if you're going to give me something, I'd rather you either make a contribution to food bank, plant a tree somewhere in Harmon Park, or buy me a Starbucks card if the maximum is $20 or something, so that I can take someone out who needs a cup of coffee and just wants to talk. Yeah. So it just looks very different. Yeah. And I think that comes with life.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I got a lot of growing up to do. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So we're talking about successes. Now, I want you to look back into just a little bit into your life story and the things that you've done. Has there been something in your life that you've achieved, whether it's a personal goal or a career goal, that you can say, this was a highlight for me?
I think there's been a couple. With my international travel and the opportunity to meet a lot of people, visit a lot of their schools or orphanages, and things that I would have never been able to do. But I'm going to have to say it was probably working at Canines for Cops, because it was really about. It wasn't just about buying a dog. It was buying canines for law enforcement agencies. And when people look at canines, they look at them as being mean, vicious dogs. That attack people on the street, and that's what you're using them for. Yeah. But in essence, these animals are highly trained. Those canines cost from about $10,000 on up, trained in their, whether they're looking for drugs, whether they're sniffing out cadavers, or whatever they're trained to do. But the stories after I met a lot of the officers is that if you have a couple of officers that are going into a house and they are looking for a suspect, humans look in with their eyes. Canines look with their nose. So if they happen to walk past a closet, a door, a human does not know that there is somebody behind there. A canine immediately goes to the door and starts barking or does something that alerts the officer that there is somebody there. Because all that has to happen is for that officer to walk in front of that door and whoever's hiding back there to start shooting, therefore killing the officer.
Correct.
But was saved by the canine. So to me, you know, when you start sharing those stories that somebody's husband, somebody's father came home, somebody's son came home, or daughter came home because of the work that canine did.
Yeah.
So, you know, I learned a great deal working with law enforcement across the nation and working with a lot of the kennels and the trainers about what they do, you know, and the safety and the number of lives that they have saved. So when you see them on TV, you just see that small snippet of them looking for the suspect or bark or bite and hold. And but I've met a number of these officers, and I've met a number of their spouses who said, my spouse came home because of their canine.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that that's probably one of the things that I'm the most proud of. It was the accidental launching the nonprofit from scratch, and I put a lot of time and effort into it. So that was rewarding.
Yeah, sounds very rewarding. You know, you never know I kind of heard sort of the backstory of like what the efforts are put into K9 units, and how the extensive money that they need to preparation and to train them, and how to still for those dogs to be still loving like partners to their partner. So yeah, I can see definitely. Okay, all right. So one last question, and I'll let you go, Liz, and we'll move on because we're supposed to be doing dinner sometime soon. All right, so. Last question. Does your life compare to the way you imagined it growing up?
No.
No.
No, it's better.
I know you said you thought you were going to be a nun. You thought you were going to be a nun. I've never heard that, but it's better.
No. I'm going to say that there were a lot of turns. There were things that I wound up doing in life that I never thought that I'd get the opportunity to do. And for me, I have no regrets, and I'm really good about saying I'm going to say I do have one, but I think that I am just blessed. I think we should treasure life. I keep things that are very close, things that are important to me. In the morning, I wake up and I thank God for giving me another day. So for me, it's like, it's a gift. What am I going to do with this today? And I think even on my social media, or one of the panels, it says, let's create something great today. And so for me, that's kind of how I treat each day.
Yeah.
So,
you being the oldest one, do you feel like you set a standard?
Oh my God, no. No, because I would have to say that each of my siblings have set their own standard.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that my mom said to us is that all of you are so different, and we are. But my husband used to call us a cult because we're very tight.
Yeah.
We are very close to each other, and when our families get together, we're still telling jokes, and we are supportive of each other's children, and we want the children to know what we went through and how we grew up, because it has served us well as being good human beings and contributing to society, and that's what we want them to be.
Yeah.
So I think we each create our own standards and our own intention of how we want to live life. This is how I live. These are my choices, and that is what directs me on where I want to work and where I want to play and who I want to be with. And I think that's really my compass, my North Star.
So when we talk about culture nuances, you mentioned that you went back to take care of your mom. I know it wasn't expected, but was there something that, did you see your mom taking care of her parents, or was it just something that you were like, it has to be me who takes care of my mom? It has to be one of us.
I think at that time, being the oldest, I think I was the only one. I think I was single, so it was kind of like, implied in. And I remember my father having that conversation with me. I need you to move back home and help me with this. And so, I mean, there was no question. And whatever my mom needed, she was going to have. And I think in our culture. I think I shared with you, we didn't talk a lot about being Mexican. We talked a lot about being family and being the Lara family and being respectful and loving and caring. And so, but that also is in line with what the Latino community is. We take care of our own.
Correct.
We take care of ourselves and we take care of our own.
Younger and older.
So, there was no question in doing that. And the same thing with my husband. Now, my husband has one sister who lives in Dallas, and so it was a shock for him to come into my family and have so many nieces and nephews and in-laws, and so it at the end it was they all loved him and they all cared for them. So I just think it's something that if you're lucky enough to have that and you're lucky enough to pass it on to your children, that this is how we live. Then they're lucky.
Yeah. Liz, thank you so much for coming on here. But before you go, if you can just tell us, if I was to look for you, you're part of the Goldman Sachs and I want to be your friend. So, Liz, where can we find you?
By all means, connect with me on social media, Liz Lara-Carreño. And, just send me a message. And, I'm more than happy to connect with folks. My role is really to look for candidates that meet the Goldman Sachs criteria. However, I will tell you that more than half of my work has been really just sponsoring and supporting small business owners with resources who just have questions on how do I do this and where do I get started. And I used to say, listen, call me up and let's meet for a cup of coffee. I did that at an event, and it was like, if I had really accepted everything, I would have been drinking coffee for like about 3 days, straight. So. Now it's trying to find other avenues, like maybe putting on a couple of Zoom meetings and saying, hey, I'm going to be online for an hour. Let's talk business, or let's talk certifications, or let's talk leadership opportunities, and how do we all step up and take on board positions? How do we step up and, communicate for things that are in the best interest of our community? And I think those conversations are important to have.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Liz. It's LizLara-Carreño.com. And then from there, you can find her email, her socials, and all those items. So really quick, Liz, if you can just wave at my camera. Bye. Thank you. And see you next time. Bye.